As I noted, our trip last week to Turkey was an effort to discuss some of the war and peace issues of our time. Lindsay knew the stakes at play in Ukraine and the importance of standing up to Russian tyranny. This topic was top of mind for all those who attended the NATO summit, which concluded in Turkey last week. I attended the summit with a bipartisan group of senators, including Senators Jeanne Shaheen, Mike Rounds, Chris Coons, and Congressman Mike Turner. Senator Graham joined us as part of the visit as well. With the war in Ukraine entering its fifth bloody year, the timing of this event was important as tides begin to turn in Ukrainian favor. Not only did Ukraine repel the initial invasion by one of the world's largest armies, it is increasingly showing progress in winning this conflict. Russia has been unable to seize additional land and is suffering staggering losses that no political leader can sustain for a war of folly. Ukraine has also increasingly taken the conflict to Russia, weakening its energy and military infrastructure, and turning Russian public opinion against this war in Ukraine. Unlike Russia, Ukraine is careful not to strike civilian targets. I'm happy to report from the NATO summit that the alliance remains determined to see Ukraine defend itself from Russia. Most of the 32-member bloc, formed from the ashes of World War II, have notably increased their defense spending. They are contributing more funding, equipment, and personnel, and are reminding one another of their commitment and importance of this historic alliance. I was glad that President Trump attended the summit. He and President Obama were right to push our allies to pay more of their fair share for the cost of NATO. But President Trump's constant rhetoric, belittling the alliance and dreams of conquering Greenland and other follies, have been ill-timed, boorish, and counterproductive. They send exactly the wrong message to President Putin about America's resolve and commitment. They put countries such as the Baltic states and Poland at even greater risk of future Russian aggression. Already, Putin is testing the alliance through sabotage, hybrid attacks, misinformation, and assassination. And with the war turning against Russia, Putin may lash out further. This is not the time for President Trump to show Putin any weakness. So I was heartened by the incredible solidarity and resolve on full display at the NATO summit. Quite simply, NATO is alive and well, as is allied support for Ukraine. Congress continues to show strong bipartisan support for NATO, including through funding, troop-level requirements, and the Baltic Security Initiative. But we can do more, notably helping Ukraine with desperately needed air defense. We should also continue to keep U.S. troop deployment as part of the NATO effort in frontline NATO member states. And we can, at long last, pass one of the two bipartisan Ukrainian bills pending in this chamber, one of them being a sanctions package that Lindsey Graham worked with Senator Blumenthal tirelessly to build support for. I understand that Lindsey had finally arranged for this measure to be introduced even this week. I hope we still go forward with the bill without delay. Lastly, after the NATO summit, we had a chance to visit Hungary, one of our NATO allies. There was a recent election in Hungary that unseated Viktor Orban after 16 years, a period that included democratic backsliding and being a thorn in the side of European efforts to help Ukraine. I want to congratulate the Hungarian people on this peaceful transfer of power and decision to play a more constructive role in European security, including standing with Ukraine. Theirs is a welcome choice that we should support here in the Senate, something I'll do in my remaining time. Mr. President, on a separate subject, last week, President Trump declared that the ceasefire with Iran was over after the United States launched a wave of retaliatory strikes in response to Iran firing on commercial ships in the Strait of Hormuz. I wish I could say I'm surprised by this, but I'm not. President Trump started this war with a genuine destabilizing regime without thinking it through. As I've said over and over again, a cliche which happens to be accurate. It is a lot easier to get into a war than it is to get out of. as we're learning in Iran every day. Iran's response, striking U.S. and allied targets in the region, holding the Strait and global economy hostage, were equally foreseeable. The Iranian regime, much like Vladimir Putin in Russia, seems to be repeatedly trying to humiliate the United States and play for time. The original misstep may have occurred even earlier when President Trump withdrew U.S. from the Iran nuclear agreement during his first term. It was a deal that was working to restrain Iran's nuclear ambitions. Now we seem to be floundering back into a much weaker deal, one that bewilderingly includes billions of dollars to help Iran rebuild. I hope wiser heads will prevail, and I look forward to congressional review of any ensuing deal with Iran as required under the Bipartisan Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act. Mr. President, I yield the floor.